Let me know, Michelle, when you want me to start and introduce you.
Sure. Yep, I'm just making sure we have everybody in from the waiting room. I think we can go ahead and get started.
I don't know how to turn the camera on.
No, make that screen bigger.
We got to look at this.
Oh,
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I
Can
think
you
we can
hear
go
us?
ahead and get started, Miss Sonia. I can let some late comers in as you're talking.
Okay, perfect. Well, hello, everyone. I'm glad to see that all of you are here, and I'm excited to introduce to you Michelle Tovar. I had the pleasure to teach with Michelle years ago, before she even had children. And she's a great Montessori teacher. She has been teaching for over 22 years all over the Tampa Bay area and also New York. She also has a degree in ESE, and then she also has a certification as a parent coach through the J Institute for Parenting. So it's really exciting for her to be here and help us. I think that we all need some guidance as far as parenting. I think that's the most difficult thing that we can do. And so always hearing other people talk to us and let us know what to do and how to, give us a little guidance will actually be great. So without further ado, I here give you Michelle. And Michelle, do you want us to go ahead and shut our mics off?
Sure. If everyone wants to mute, and I'm going to try to make this as interactive as we possibly can. I know the time can be challenging with bedtime and dinner and stuff like that. So I understand if you prefer to have your cameras off, that's totally fine. And then Miss Sonia, maybe you can help me with the chat. If we get some questions, we'll open that up as we go. So thank you so much for that introduction. One more time, I just want to make sure, can you guys see my presentation? It's not cut off at all? Perfect. Awesome. Well, as Miss Sonia said, my name is Michelle, and I'm here to help you discover more peace, connection, and confidence as a parent. So let's go ahead and get started. As Miss Sonia said, parenting is one of the hardest jobs that we all can ever have. And maybe, when you've talked to other parents or you have other colleagues, you kind of hear in conversation that parents want to parent in a more peaceful way. They have a desire to do things maybe differently than the way they were parented. Maybe there's some generational patterns of yelling or emotional wounding or trauma that they want to do away with. But just reading about it doesn't always equal transformation. And so my goal here today is to give you some very actionable different perspectives of thinking about how you're engaging not only with yourself, but with your children in your home environments. I personally have loved working with children ever since I was a kid. I started off as a babysitter when I was about 12, all the way to a little bit of college. And then I eventually went to college and got my teaching degree, and then my Montessori certification. So my passion for children has always been my driving force to really just make the world a better place. And honestly, what I feel kids need now more than anything is adults in their homes, in their schools, in their communities who are aware of and actively working on their own emotional and behavior regulation. And I believe with all my heart that the best way to do this is by giving adults the tools of personal growth and transformation. So let me switch my slide. Okay, so as Ms. Sonia mentioned, I came into parent coaching after teaching for many, many years in different Montessori environments. And I just found that the methodology and my coaching training was so aligned with Montessori. I've always been drawn to learn and develop more skills around child development and all things social and emotional. And I had the opportunity to practice this in my classroom for so many years, just, really looking at the needs of the whole child and meeting them where they're at, by preparing a peaceful environment, modeling grace and courtesy, respect for self and others. I always felt, though, that there was a need to learn how I could better support parents with the challenges of modern day parenting. And so what I do is I work with many different family dynamics, but a common trend that I see that parents are feeling is just complete exhaustion and overwhelm with all the daily power struggles they face in modern day age. And so I help parents gain more cooperation from their children by using effective communication tools, learning more about emotional intelligence for really all members of the family. And so I guide parenting partners to strengthen and bring more peace in their homes. Oops. My biggest growth partners, I would say, are my 3 boys. Being a mom myself has allowed me the wonderful opportunity to grow and learn really just so much about myself and maybe how I was carrying, things from my past and projecting onto them, not intentionally. My middle son is pretty strong-willed little guy, very strong, and he kind of feels everything. He's big highs and big lows. He's super sweet on the inside, but he'll let you know how he feels. And he really just lives life without fear of voicing what he values and what he believes strongly in. I do really love that about him. My oldest is quite the opposite. He lives everything on the inside. He'll come when he's needing some support or just really needing some time to unpack. And then my youngest is probably the most sensitive of the 3. But he's learned by having 2 teenage brothers that, he can be a little competitive. But really, it has always been important to me to build a close connection with my boys while fostering their true individuality. But the reality was, like, as a young mom, I couldn't always access that present, the peace that I wanted for them, even with all my training and experience in the classroom. I had fears, I had worries, and I just realized that I needed to do some inner work and I needed to just learn how to be in relationship with my children, to create cooperative environment where we can come up with solutions together. I don't need to pretend that I know more about what they need or want. I never had to use sticker charts or reward system. It's just, when we give children the space to have their voice heard, and when their needs are met in cooperative ways, those big bad behaviors just go out the window. I really truly believe that children do not want to misbehave. They don't want us to be angry at them. They want to experience the love and harmony and connection just as much as we do. And so this is the path, and I'm really excited to share this process with you because it really does raise leaders that are able to communicate and advocate for themselves in a peaceful way, and to really just, speak against injustices in the world. And when they don't have to be shamed or scared into a behavior, they really just become the leaders of our future. And so I want to do a little quick activity. I want you to, if you feel called to, close your eyes and imagine your child. Miss Sonia's probably around your children's age. Imagine your children are grown young adults, 25, 26. And the reason I say 25, 26 is because that is when the human brain is completely developed. So we have all different organs that we're born with, that our lungs, our heart, our kidneys, they're fully developed at birth, but the human brain does not completely develop until around age 25, 26. And we know for some people it's later. So I want to imagine they're coming home for the holidays. Maybe they live away. And I want you to think about what future skills are they coming home to you with? Maybe they're a responsible young adult that's kind and empathetic, confident in themselves. They're resilient. They've been through some experiences in life, great problem solvers, able to self-regulate their emotions, an independent young girl, young woman or man, passionate. Maybe they've found their career path and they're passionate about it. They're creative thinkers, effective communicators. They're loyal and honest humans, respectful. They have emotional stability. They've developed emotionally healthy habits, and they're compassionate. All right, you can open your eyes. So I wanted to let that sink in for a minute. And what we know is that, Maria Montessori, a wise woman, Dr. Maria Montessori, way wise beyond her time, she based her educational methodology on human development, and she believed that mirror neurons pruned throughout the brain development of a child confirm the idea that children learn best through their environment, by absorbing, by observing, by repeating. And she discovered this through observation, but it was later confirmed by a neuroscientist in the early 90s. And so, not only did Maria Montessori believed in the prepared environment, but she also believed in the prepared adult. And so when the adult is able to access presence in themselves, they're really prepared for any situation. And so because we know that parents are the child's first community unit, and you can see the impact that parents really do have on their children's development. My question to you is, are you modeling those skills that you hope your child will develop by the time they're 25 or 26? And so because you're here, I'm guessing you love your children, you want to do the best for them, you want to be the best parent as possible, you want to have more fun with them and less frustrating moments. And, I want to give you this path to really take all your experiences from the past and apply them with some new perspectives and techniques. And because as I mentioned before, information doesn't always equal transformation. So sometimes maybe because you read some parenting books or you listen to a podcast or follow some online leaders, you kind of end up feeling lost or even worse. And so, really for generations after generations, parents have asked the same questions, like, how do I get my child to behave? How do I get them to listen to me? How do I get out the door on time? And I really believe that we've reached a point in evolution where humans, we have so much more access to different information and on child development, on brain development. And even emotional intelligence. I really believe that, we can start looking at these questions through a different lens. And that was really, what my journey was when I seeked out and left my classroom and began to become a parenting coach. I saw that there was a need to support parents on their journey and really create a safe place free of judgment where adults can learn more tools and achieve their goals. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my slides here. There we go. And so instead of asking the question, how do I get another person, how do I get my child to behave? There's really, a question that I lovingly would like to ask you today. It's a question I ask myself every day. It's how can I, as a mom, as a dad, as a caregiver, as an educator, How can I grow as a person in the name of raising a better person? So essentially, what we discovered is when we turn the mirror around and we look at our role as parents differently, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, a lot begins to shift, and it does so quickly. And it really doesn't matter how old the children are. I have clients whose kids are infants. I have school age and I have teenagers. It's really, it's not really a mystery why this happens, because when we transform the way we behave and what we experience, that naturally transforms. Okay, so to carry on here, I have some obstacles I want to go over. And I really, again, I feel like it takes so much courage and bravery to actually be willing to look at maybe how your own reactivity or communication style, or maybe your inconsistent expectation of children is showing up. It's way easier to blame it on the kids, right? Oh, that was my middle child. He's so difficult, or my kid just won't listen to me, or they're just so challenging. And so I'm going to invite you to just have some grace and a lot of compassion as we start to talk about some of these things. So in a moment, you can either write it in the chat or you can write it on a piece of paper. I'm going to go over these 4 obstacles, and then you can kind of think about which one you're currently facing. Okay, so number 1, you're often not in the right state of mind to be able to connect with your child to access better discipline tools. And so, when you're feeling your feelings, are you stuffing them down and not letting yourself feel them? Or are you expressing them in a way that's maybe harmful to others? And so when we think about harming a person, we mean physically, of course, but what about emotionally and spiritually? Are you chipping away at their confidence or at their self-worth, or even at their right to have a voice? And I believe this is such a huge piece of why there's so much disconnect in the world, and why everyone's just kind of so harsh with each other, because people haven't learned to feel their feelings and express them in a nonviolent way. And what we do know is that connection leads to cooperation. Number 2, you are not sure how to replace unproductive parenting tools such as yelling, threatening, punishing, and permissiveness. Recent research shows, it's really telling, but the impact of yelling on a child's brain development is just as impactful as spanking. And so maybe you're wanting to do things differently, but you're struggling accessing more productive tools consistently. Number 3, you don't know how to sustain a parent-child connection for long periods and how to recover from breakdowns. So the parent-child relationship really is the foundation for every relationship that child will have in their lives. So I know when you think about it that way, it seems like a lot of pressure. But it's really, and I teach this in my program deeply, it's that attachment style of a human being. So there's a disorganized attachment style and there's an insecure attachment style. And often many of us who, are raised without the secure attachment develop, toxic relationship patterns. So this is where codependency comes from, where people pleasing comes from. All of those are rooted actually from the primary parent-child attachment. So connection is where you, the parent with the fully developed brain, staying regulated during your child's big storms. Remember, connection over correction. And so, children feel connection differently from us. They're wired differently. And so, they're their own person and their brains are different. And I can tell you, my 14-year-old teenager, he loves to debate. He loves to argue. He loves to talk about different topics and and just stir things up. And that makes him feel seen, and that makes him feel heard and valued. He loves to connect through debating. That's not my idea of connecting, but I have learned to accept that this is the way he feels connection. I don't feel it, but he feels it. And so I've learned to participate and understand that we're connecting when we're talking about sports or whatever topic he brings up to me. So connection is where the other person feels seen, heard, and valued. And sometimes that happens when you both feel it. Number 4, you repeatedly treat the misbehavior without addressing the root of the behavior. And so do you get triggered when your child or your tween or teen, has big emotion and you just want it to stop, without really getting curious as to what might be going on? Are your responses or decisions or choices with your children, are they driven by your internalized compass of values versus what other people think or want? Your child's behavior is their best attempt at getting their needs met with the tools they've developed so far. And so when we become, as parents, confident with our responses and our interactions with our children, when they're misbehaving, because maybe we've discovered what the root is, we start to care a lot less about what others might think about our child. And it's really an interesting perspective to take a look at. If children, like I mentioned earlier, model behavior, and we all have those mirror neurons where children literally mirror the way their parents respond to the world, to life, to challenges, to feelings, to other people in relationship, then doesn't it make sense that we do the work of becoming the person we want our children to eventually be? So in the chat, or you can unmute, either way, go ahead and if you want to share what number or numbers of parent obstacles you're facing.
Please do share, and don't feel that there is any judgment whatsoever. This is for all of us to learn and for Michelle to guide us in how to do things. If you want to write it on the chat, I'll go ahead and start reading to Michelle what is it that your questions are, or what are your parenting styles. Or if you have a question about number 1, 2, 3, or 4, please ask.
Yes, good point, Miss Sonia. This is judge-free. I always tell my children, I said, I'm raising you, but you're raising me too. We're growth partners. We're growing together.
Well, I'm Summer. I'll speak up. For me, one of the struggles is the meltdowns. It's like, for my son, it's like the end of the world. One little thing can go wrong, and it's like his entire world has just burnt up and everything's crashing. And it's like, and it's very difficult to recover from that, even with redirecting. And my problem is sometimes I get so frustrated and I realize like I'm guilty of the yelling. And then I realize the yelling isn't working. So I shut down, and then I'm like, okay, well, you know what? You're just going to have to deal with this. And then I don't know, like, what would be the best way to do when, his world's on fire? Like, I don't want to like support it because it's like, well, your world's not on fire. But at the same time, I don't want to like not support it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Of course.
I'm stuck. Yeah, that would be something that I struggle with, is how to come out of those meltdowns and show him how to react when something doesn't go his way and how it's okay.
Right.
And it kind of scared me, the fact that, well, he's emulating what's around him. So it's kind of making me second guess how I am now, because I don't like the idea of thinking that he picked that up on me,
Sure.
But I get that.
So what was the age of your son again? Did I miss that?
It's 7.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you so much for sharing. You're absolutely right. So biologically, we slip into that. You've probably heard of fight or flight, you know, when our nervous system is dysregulated. Like our body just naturally, it's almost like a bear is going to attack us. Like it, I mean, not literally, but our body kind of tenses up and it shows up probably differently. And so when your son is dysregulated, like you said, because that is big, that matters to him, you logically you don't understand why he's melting down over something very simple. But to him, his body is experiencing that same exact thing. He is slipping into that fight or flight mode, right? And he's unable to access the logical part of his brain. So, you know, if I do a little brain model, you might have heard, you know, children flipping their lid, and the amygdala is attached to the brain stem, which is your nervous system. So when your nervous system is triggered or activated, the frontal cortex, which is the logical part, the planning, the thinking, that's flipped. So he's having, you know, whatever happens, he yells, he screams, he's not able to access that logical part of his brain. So
And he cries. It's not even screaming.
I'm sorry?
He cries. Like he'll just have he's not violent or he doesn't do anything. He'll just sit and just bawl his tears out, like just bawl his eyes out.
Right. So what happens if his lid is flipped and he's very upset, his emotions, the amygdala is in charge of his emotions. His emotions are wired. He's not able to access he's offline basically. And let's say your lid also flips, right? So now you got an adult and a child with both their lids split. You're both not able to access the thinking logical part of your brain, right? And so one of the things I do is I teach self-regulation and co-regulation. So the first step is you need to regulate your emotions. You need to tell your body you're not in danger, you're safe. And there's so many ways to do that. First, you have to track where you feel it. It's kind of like a pause button before you go into reaction. So whether that's breathing, whether that's, you know, a quick massage, whether that's a hug, whether that's a drink of water, whether that's a quick walk in the room, you're regulating yourself. So your lid is not flipped. And then you're able to kind of lean in, you're anchoring yourself and you're harboring to your child. So they will actually borrow from your calm. And that is called co-regulation. And children will actually co-regulate up until their late teens. I have a 16-year-old, and I mean, it doesn't look the same as your 7-year-old, but you know, if he's having a rough day, he'll come and lay on the bed and he's processing, he's talking, he's listening. That's co-regulating. He's borrowing from my calm. So it looks different developmentally as the children grow. But it sounds like your son is really entering the beginning stages of being able to, you know, learn how to self-regulate himself. He still hasn't learned that. He's just entering that. So I hope that kind of clarifies a little bit of how the importance of regulating first and then co-regulating.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that and including that story about your son, because I have a 15-year-old, and granted, her gestures are not as grand as my 7-year-old, but her response is the same.
Right.
She will also, that's insane that you said, wow.
Yeah, so you made the connection where it just kind of looks
I did.
as they get, but they still, you know, and sometimes they just need us to listen, right? They don't need us to fix it. And it's hard as a parent to not fix it and not want to fix it, but because we have that logical brain, we're older, but sometimes they just need to listen. So someone said, we got a 3, a 1. Oh, sorry, did you want to read it, Miss Sonia?
Yeah, we have a 1 and a 2, and then also I only see a 1 and a 2, and then it says, so what to do when when calm adult doesn't help the child calm down. So in other words, she's calm as an adult and that's not helping the child. What to do then?
So the child is having, it's taking them a long time to regulate themselves, and you're staying calm. I would say, and we'll get into it a little more as we continue the presentation, it's important to look at what needs might not be met for the child. So there are like core fundamental needs. And I like to describe it as an iceberg, right? We only see the top of the iceberg, but you have to scuba dive down to really see what's beneath. So what need is being unmet there? Maybe they're needing some validation. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they need rest. Maybe they need more autonomy. There might be a need that's not being met, and they're just trying to communicate it. They don't know how, but that behavior is a message, and you have to kind of figure out what that message is. And we'll go into that a little more too, what those fundamental needs are.
Would you think that when a parent says I'm calm and my child is not co-regulating, even though I'm calm, would you think that children actually can sense that inside that parent is really not that calm? He's acting calm, but underneath all of that calmness, you're about to explode because you do not know the skills. You haven't found the skills on calm your child. And whether sometimes we understand it or not, the children are feeling.
Oh yeah.
And though when we're not saying it and we are acting like they're calm, they know. They know, they sense it, and it gets worse. And then also in the chat, parents say for 1 and 2, what suggestions would you do if a parent is having problems with 1 and 2?
So just to your point there, Ms. Sonia, when we talk about communication, right? Children are very in tuned to, how you feel, how you look, your eye contact. And so 55% of the way we communicate is nonverbal. So it could be your gestures, it could be calm, but like doing like gestures, or it could be the way you're looking at somebody, or the lack of not looking at somebody. 38% is the tone, and 7% is actually the words you use. So when you think about your communication, even if you're calm, what message is your child receiving from you? And then the other one was 1 and 2. Was that the next one? So 1 is you're often not in the right state of mind to be able to connect with your child or to access better disciplines tools. And so that's the one, like if you're stuffing your feelings, and it's a lot of it has to do with the way you were parented. And we're going to go into the subconscious mind. If you go into that kind of reactionary of either stuffing those emotions away or reacting because maybe that's the way you were parented, whether it was a kind of a neglect or a permissive type of way your parents dealt with you, or authoritarian where there was like punitive punishments and yelling, that subconsciously can show up for you whether you want it to or not. And it's part of your wiring in your own childhood. And so that's why it's really important to do that inner work and kind of reparent yourself so that you can parent the way you want to parent. And it's no fault to your parents, right? They did the best with the tools they had, and the generations before, but it doesn't mean that that's the only way. There's more tools to access. And then 2, you're not sure how to replace the unprotective. So pretty much the same thing is in my program, we strive to parent with the child. It doesn't mean that you're not going to slip into power over parenting or power under parenting if that's your default pattern, but it's just bringing awareness and being conscious about what your goals are in parenting and what tools to access consistently. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to continue on, but if any other questions come up, please don't hesitate in asking. Okay, so we know that there's a link because we've all talked about the information that's available, you know, all the books and information, but yet we still lose our temper, or we yell, or we react. And so there's my iceberg. We still dysregulate, and why is that? It has everything to do with your subconscious conditioned pattern behavior. And so, you know, how many of you ever like tried to willpower yourself? Like, I'm not going to yell at my kids, or I'm not going to react harshly. And then, you know, what happens? You're at the end of your rope because usually you're stressed from work, or you're tired, or you're hungry. And then what happens? You yell. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're ineffective. It's not because you suck at life. It's really because there's this truth that we all live by. And it's that 95% of actions and behaviors are driven by the subconscious mind, especially when we're under-resourced, you know? So when we're hungry, we're stressed, we're tired. And so you can really only willpower yourself to extent. I think I read somewhere you have like 2 hours worth of willpower a day, and the rest you're really left to your defenses. And so we're always going to revert to that pre-programmed pattern of behavior of the subconscious mind. I'm trying to move there we go. Okay. All right, so what's driving this? The actions that we take 95% of the time, you know, is informed by our own child experience and our beliefs and our worldview. And it's like the operating system, you know, built on our past. And it's not really wired to create the future we want. You know, it's really just wired to protect us from struggles or fears or failures or even trauma of the past. It's kind of like that warning signal, which is good, right? If you're in actual danger, but you know, we have to remember that the subconscious mind is really not that smart for the future decisions that we want to make for our children or for ourselves. So really we see our child and really all of life through a distorted lens of our past, you know, experiences and fears and disappointments. And it's kind of like how two people can be in the car having the same experience. And one is admiring the sunset and the trees and the beauty outside, and the other one's complaining about the drivers and the traffic. Same experience, but different perceptions. And so because a lot of adults haven't done the work to rewire the subconscious patterns, because maybe they haven't, you know, reconciled with their own parenting past, or, you know, learned to speak the language of feelings and needs, basically all their stuff is just coming up, and it's coming up all over the kids. And, you know, it's not because they don't love their kids. They have the best intentions, right? We all do. It's just how humans are and how we work. And so children, through no fault of their own, who are innocent, who rely on us for safety and security and protection, mentoring, guidance, unconditional love, end up bearing, you know, the brunt of adults' insecurities and unhealthy relationship and communication patterns. But we don't have to stay here. And, you know, I'm here to change this because I feel that children, they deserve better. And so the way to do this is really to embody a growth mindset. And so, like I said, you know, in the beginning, it really takes a brave, bold person to be willing, you know, to say, how can I change in the name of change? You know, what do I need to do to learn and grow and be the best version of myself for my children? And so, you know, it has less to do with the children really than it has to do with the adults. And so growth mindset is really, it invites us to step back into like a beginner's mind and acknowledge with a lot of compassion, that there are some areas that we can improve on around communication or emotional expression. And we let it be okay, to fail and make mistakes. And we try new things. And that's very different than probably the fixed mindset that a lot of our parents had. I can share for you, with my father, it was his way or the highway. He's very old school, Colombian, hardworking father. He had a lot of trauma in his life, but he laid down the law. And that's a very fixed mindset. And it actually caused some teenage rebellion. I'm not gonna lie. So, I love him to death. He had good intentions. He wanted to protect me from this, cruel world. But in his eyes, I was incapable of making decisions for myself. And I didn't want that for my children. That's a very fixed mindset. Okay. There we go. All right, so the bottom line is we can't give our children what we can't give ourselves. And so if we don't love ourselves unconditionally, then we can't love them unconditionally. And if we can't provide validation for ourselves, they're not going to believe us when we provide them with validation. And so we're going to talk about these human needs. And so here they are. These are the core human needs that we all share. So whether you're a child, a teenager, an adult, someone at the end of their life, we all have these in common. And so there's safety is the physiological need for shelter, food, water, rest, emotional well-being. Variety is the need for excitement, unique experiences, and access to new information and change. Validation is the desire to be seen, understood, and appreciated by others. Significance is knowing that we matter and are important to others. Connection is that we can give and receive love and feel that we belong to a community. Autonomy, this is a big one for teenagers, owning the choices and decisions that we make for ourselves. Growth is the desire to do better, to learn more and gain expertise in the areas of life that matters most to us. And contribution is being of service to others and making the world a better place. So these needs are very different than, mommy, I need a new iPhone, or I need a toy at Target. These are we're talking about giving children access to their core human needs as much as possible. And in an ideal world, we're able to do this all the time, but of course, that isn't always feasible. But the magic piece here is that we have to actually give them to ourselves first. And so we're going to look at this parenting thing through a different lens, because one of our foundational principles here is that all behavior, whether it's good or bad, is an expression of a need, and whether that need has been met or unmet. So you might want to write it down. All behavior, good or bad, is an expression of a need, one of those fundamental human needs that we all share, and whether it has been met or unmet. And so, let's look at how this plays out, because you can really kind of see that both adults and children are living in this pool of unmet needs. And this is why coaching is so powerful, because we actually, I give the opportunity to my clients to feel seen and heard, and they experience real empathy and significance and connection and autonomy. And so they get to grow. Because really, a lot of us are not getting many of these things much of the time. And so what happens when we're living in this swirl of unmet needs, adults aren't getting their needs met. And so let's look at it from like the child to the adult. So when the child needs are not met, whether it's for connection or maybe autonomy, maybe they want a little longer leash than we've been giving them. So their behavior will start to escalate, right? They're basically like yelling with their actions that they have a need and it's not being met. And so when children start to escalate their behavior, even when they're 16, 17, then the adult starts to feel their nervous system getting dysregulated and then become emotionally reactive, right? Because maybe the adult's desperate for relief. So what happens? They snap, they yell, they threaten, they send them away. They don't let them go out with their friends. They take away their favorite toy or their iPad. And so, essentially what's happening is the adult is reverting, the parent is reverting into a power over stance, right? And so the child is encroaching on their behavior, or through their behavior on their needs. And so the child pulls away, right? Because who wants to be sent away? Who wants to be scolded like that? And so when children withdraw, they go into disconnection. And so when the kids pull away, then we start to have ineffective communication patterns. So we start to lecture or justify or defend our reactivity. And then we start to feel awful, right? We feel worried. We feel guilty. We feel shame. We feel scared because our connection is withdrawn from us. And so then it goes into, trying to woo them back. You want some ice cream? Reverting into like a power under, and around and around and around we go. And so, it's really a cycle of frustration that a lot of families, unfortunately, are stuck in. And so my work as a coach is really to break this pattern. Okay, but I want to share a quick story with my son, my oldest son. He was probably about 7, and he his uncle bought him a skateboard for Christmas. And so, he is my hyper focused, determined child. He's been since the baby, like just really when he's learning a skill, like he's just like determined. So he was really determined to learn how to skateboard, and he was learning how to balance and push himself off and all the things. Well, one day I was in the other room, I think I was folding laundry or something, and he decided to bring the skateboard inside the house, and I wasn't really aware of this. And I heard a loud crash, and I ran into the room. I saw him laying on his back, and I saw the skateboard all the way across inside the wall of my house, like on the other side. And so I immediately reacted, and I said to him, "What are you doing? What is wrong with you thinking you can do this in the house? There's a big hole in the wall, and now we have to fix it because you were careless. Give me your skateboard and go to your room." So I clearly did not, handle that the best way. I shamed him by saying, "What's wrong with you?" Then I blamed him for being careless. And then I punished him by sending him away and taking his skateboard. So what skills, if you remember from the beginning, what future skills was I teaching him at that moment here? Any skills?
Actually, you took away the possibility of him trying new things, but I do have a question about that. Did you have a rule not to skateboard inside the house?
No, it was brand new. And I'm going to get to that point.
So then, okay, got it.
Yeah,
So
I'm going to get to that point. Yeah, the
you took
preventative.
away, you took away, you took away the wanting from him to try new things and
Right.
to figure out things for himself. And
Exactly.
to always be afraid that if he actually tries something new, he's going to be told by somebody that he's not good.
Right. And mistakes aren't good, right? And oh, somebody asked, is he okay? Yes, he was okay. Thank you for asking. So after I took a moment to myself, because that guilt really set in, I went over to him in his room and I said, Giovanni, is it okay if we talk? I said, I want to apologize for yelling at you and for really just overreacting. Mommy did not handle that well. And I was completely surprised and scared when I saw you laying on the ground and then I saw the big hole in the wall. But I know how hard you've been working on learning how to skateboard. And I realized, we probably should have discussed ahead of time where the best places for you to practice would be. Do you want to help me think of some good places to skateboard to where you can feel safe or maybe have something to hold on to? And he said, yeah, mommy, that would be great. Maybe you can walk with me, he said, and I can hold on to you. So what future skills did he learn from the redo or the repair conversation I had with him?
Problem solving, planning, goal setting. Oh my God, so many.
So many more, right? So many more that will carry him into the future. Forgiveness, mistakes happen, even human adults, even human adults make mistakes, right? Way more. So whether you sometimes, slip into that power over parenting, or power under parenting, just know that there's simply ineffective coping mechanisms. Because when you look at what skill, like, you want to always have that in your mind. What future skill am I teaching my child? And sometimes that's hard in the heat of the moment. So essentially, we're unconsciously doing, not knowing that we're doing, is asking our kids to behave in a way that doesn't upset us, that doesn't, make us uncomfortable, that's less annoying. And so, with all the love in my heart, that's not their job. They're kids. It's our job. And so my invitation to adults is to work and consider turning their focus, like you've been driving that scary parenting wheel for a while, peel your fingers off of it and just with a lot of compassion and love, turn that mirror around and focus on your leadership growth and personal development. It's an extraordinary thing because as adults begin to shift their internal beliefs, make mistakes, right? Because that's okay. Learn new ways to express feelings and communicate their needs without shaming or blaming or guilt. And it's really just guided by values and family goals. Everything begins to change for kids. I hear this a lot from my clients when they're like 3 weeks into my program. They're like, oh my gosh, everything is changing. But it's really, it's got to start with you. And so when adults do the work of transforming themselves, you can start to see your child through a clear lens and allow them, the space to be children, to find their own sea legs, to take risks, to make mistakes, and have it not be a reflection of you. They are separate from us. And I know sometimes as parents, we have that fear. We don't want them making the mistakes we made, but this is their journey. And so, this is how it works because it doesn't just change. And so in order to flip those 4 obstacles that were mentioned earlier, to flip them on their heads, parents need to do some work. And so really making peace with your parenting past. You need to replace old limiting beliefs with new powered beliefs. You need to gain emotional competency. You need to learn to self-regulate their nervous system and give their children the tools of co-regulation. They need to learn to communicate consciously. I lean heavily on Martian Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication. It's a great book. Adults need to know, what their values are. How do you teach your children who to be in the world if you haven't done the work inquiring, yourself? What matters to me as a parent and what doesn't? And what matters to my spouse or partner and what doesn't? And how do we build that into a family ecosystem so that we're actually teaching and guiding our children to the values that matter most to us? And, my favorite part is, how do we have more fun? How do we play with our kids? How do we access joy? How do we just be silly? It really goes by in a blink of an eye. Yeah, I'll put the book at the end. And so really it's about, it's about changing the game that we're playing. So like, if you don't like the rules, sometimes you just gotta, make a different game. And so when you look at the traditional parenting, how probably a lot of us were raised, how much of the world still judges our success as parents, it's through this idea that we need to condition our children to, exhibit acceptable behaviors and achieve these goals. And that's really more of like a power over in a nutshell. Like, you will conform to my expectations, And so versus the transformational game, which is that we embrace, the role as parents as being mentors and guides and leaders and not the owner. We help our children develop an intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is the driving desire to do the right thing, even when no one is looking. And so, instead of responding with like reactivity and punishments and consequences, we're actually teaching our children through the values and communication. And so, let me go to the next. And so the path to more peace and cooperation is really teaching from clearly articulated, discussed values and versus, fear and control. It's really just working with our children to teach them to regulate their own nervous system. And, because actually they need that co-regulation, like I mentioned before, until late into their teens. Because of their brain's development. And so we allow children to increase their autonomy over time. We're not going to clamp down on them the more independent they get, because that just creates more like rebellion. We're going to make the leash longer and allow them to feel trusted. And we're going to lead our family into a culture of communication, connection, and cooperation. And so, children by their nature, they're going to test limits. They're going to push boundaries. They're evolving little, human beings that are learning how to be adult human beings. And up until recent times, a lot of parents and teachers and grandparents were like, you're bad, hold it in, don't sit like that, just be perfect and behave. And we no longer need to frame behavior as children are good or bad or easy or difficult. When we see that children, in fact, all adults, have periods of growth opportunities, maybe they're testing a limit or they're pushing a boundary, they're not living into a value that we've taught them. And so when we see that through that lens, we're giving our children the experience of a growth opportunity. We're working with them to get their needs met. Like, what are they needing? Are they needing more autonomy? Are they needing more rest? Are they needing connection? And then we, the adult, we figure out what our needs are too. Our nervous system is regulated. We're feeling heard. We're feeling confident. And so our confidence goes up. And then our child's confidence goes up. And up and up and up we go. And as I mentioned before, it takes 26 years for the human brain to mature. And so we're working with children in a culture where all needs are important, the adult needs and the child needs. And we're going to receive way more, cooperation, and the child's going to have a bigger self-esteem, and up and up and up they go. And so I believe there's no better opportunity in the world to allow our children to be our growth partners. And really by, challenging, taking the challenge of doing the work, of becoming the model that we want to be, and that, can meet our child's needs in the most fulfilling way. Not perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no better person in the world to become better for in the world than our child. It's so worth it. And so if you feel called to dive deeper and learn more about my work, and how to apply any of these strategies that you learned today, just reach out to me. My website is there. You can text me, or my phone number is also there, or visit my website and schedule a complimentary call. I appreciate your time. And before we sign off, though, I want to stop sharing. And I'd love to hear any big takeaways that you got from this presentation, or that you're walking away. I'd love to hear that. Or any questions about your family, I'm here. I'll put my website in the chat box as well.
Basically, that we need to be the people we want our kids to become.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said.
And I think also you touched a point that I think that we all need to be aware. Children are mirroring the way we parent them. They are actually looking to us and acting a lot of the times the same way we are acting. So I think that's very telling, not to make us feel bad, but I think to make us look inside. How do we take care of ourselves in order to give them how are we going to meet our needs in order to teach them how to meet their needs?
Right. How do you fill your cup so that you can pour into theirs? Or maybe you've heard the oxygen mask scenario too, right? Like how do you help your family if you're not helping yourself? Very good point, Ms. Sonia. Oh, thank you. Someone put the nonviolent communication, a language of life, changing tools. Yes, Martian Rosenberg. Thank you for putting that in there. I appreciate that. This is their journey, someone said. Yes, it is their experience, their path. It's totally separate than ours. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad that you found this helpful. Yes, I am recording, and I will share it with Miss Sonia. She can send it out, because I know some of you had to come in and out, or maybe couldn't make it. So
as soon as I get it, I will go ahead and share it, and I will email it to everybody, because I think it's very important. And if you take advantage of texting, calling her to do something that you need, I think it will be a great tool to have.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you, Michelle, so much for coming and giving us your expertise and helping us to become better parents, and validating a lot of what the research has done. And I think that's important that you came with a lot of knowledge about what is new in brain research. And I think that's extremely important. And I really hope that you parents take advantage of this, and then know exactly that you need to take care of yourself in order to be able to become great parents, which you already are, but it's always great. We can always do better. So thank you so much, Michelle. I really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much. And I know, Miss Sonia, as I think it was your daughter, your youngest just got married. You're kind of at the end of that, and you can probably share how what we do in the front end of our parenting really projects our relationship going into adulthood, which we have more time, right? And going forward into their adulthood than we really do in those primary years. So those primary years really make an impact on our children.
And most people, they don't understand. Sometimes they ask me, it's just like, Sonia, how are you so connected with your children? I have a 34-year-old and a 31-year-old, soon to be 32. And we're so close and we share so many things. But I think it was probably one of the best things I was able to do, even though I made a lot of mistakes as a parent, that I think I always wanted to make sure that they grew up knowing that they were trusted. And so the rules that we set at home were based on trust. And they knew if they broke that rule, that means I didn't trust them anymore. And it had to take time for them to build it. So I think that was a very big thing. And I think that was part of, I learned from my mother. I had a great mother and I knew how she worked on that. I felt trusted, and that's what I wanted to do. And I think that was the most important thing between our children, my children, and even now with my grandchildren is communication.
Definitely. It's so important to have that openness and to be able to express yourself and just know, yeah, okay, the teenager, maybe the delivery needs to be worked and tweaked, but they're really learning how to be advocators and communicators, and they go through stages.
But I think that parents often confuse that ability to give them all of the needs and meet the needs, and they confuse it with being permissive and giving them everything they want. And people often come in the classroom and go, oh my gosh, why are they so quiet? Because they want to be quiet, because they're working, because they're really, it's not like they are being in a peaceful environment. Doesn't mean allowing them to do whatever they want. There's got to be boundaries. Absolutely. So please call Michelle. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for everyone. And you could be doing anything on a Wednesday night, but you're here. That just shows what amazing parents and how invested you are in your children. So thank you so much for your time. And I will send over the recording to Miss Sonia. Have a wonderful night.